Hey horror fans, it is a new episode of Hellmouth Hotline, and let's get into the pack from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And just before we get into it, check out the links in the show notes of the episode. There's a lot of stuff that I'm doing beyond this podcast, and if you fancy checking some of that out, especially the vlog channel on YouTube, really going to be pushing and doing more of that stuff over the coming months, so I would really appreciate you checking that out. Let's get into it. This review is episode 6, titled The Pack. Now, every series I feel can't, and very rarely does, hit 100% each time. There's usually 1 or 2 episodes per season that are, pretty weak, and in all honesty, if I had to pick one out of season 1, this would be it. The Pack. I don't want to say this is an episode you can just skip, because, as I say, it's probably not the strongest episode in the series, but there's stuff that happens in here that is, key moments that need to be seen, and there's something that happens in this episode that affects the rest of the series and set up to the seasons coming in. So there's something, even though it's not a strong episode, there's always something in here that you need to see. So you can't actually, and I wouldn't recommend in these, the seasons of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, to really skip any of the episodes, because there's always, as I say, a little something in there that you need to see. So essentially in this episode, there's a school trip happening. They're off to the zoo to check it out, and Buffy's kind of bored and whatnot. She doesn't really want to be there. She wants to be out doing something else. Everybody else is kind of saying, you remember just like yourself back in the day whenever you're in a school trip. So meets up with Xander, Willow and whatnot, and they kind of cheer her up a little bit. They're going to go and try and make the best of it. So there's another little guy turns up, a little geek sort of a fellow, the sort of guy that's kind of gets bullied by all the cool kids in school, which to be honest, that would have been me. If I had to compare myself to a character in this episode, that was the kid that sort of got, that's why I'm a bit of a bruiser now, because you grow up and you start to learn how to defend yourself. I digress. So, of course, there's these 4 characters turn up in this episode, and they're the bullies. They're kind of giving this guy a little bit of grief. Xander decides that he's going to go and try and break it up, and they sneak into the hyena enclosure and get this little guy to come in, and the whole reason they're doing it is because they just want to mess with him, just screw about, freak him out sort of idea. But it is a quarantine area, so it's cordoned off. Xander sees this happening, puts 2 and 2 together, and comes up with, these guys are up to something, I'll get and rescue this little guy. So he does. He goes in, sorts it out, gets the little guy out of there. Just as that happens, Xander's with these other 4 kids, and this hyena, they're kind of tempting the hyena with this kid. Xander pulls him away, gets him to safety. You see the eyes in the thing glowing, and then these guys' eyes glow as well. And something's happened here. So essentially this episode is these 4 kids along with Xander get possessed by the spirit of a hyena and start acting completely out of character. And these guys, people don't really suspect it, because it sets it up as these 4 main characters, these 4 guys were, the troublemakers. So, a bad attitude would kind of go unnoticed with these 4 for a while, but Xander is involved in it too, and you can see him turning into basically a prick in this episode to everybody, and including Buffy and Willow as well. So, I'm just going to bounce over a lot of stuff here, because as I say, this episode, there's a lot of stuff happens in here that just can basically be a lot of, Xander's attitude is changing, the way he's acting towards people is changing. Something's wrong. They start to get suspicious. They start to look into what's happening. There's a little zookeeper at the beginning of the episode 2, I should say, that, you know, warned Buffy and the rest of them off going into this enclosure with the hyenas, that it was cordoned off. And that's important because later on this guy comes back in again when they're trying to figure out what's happening. So, as I say, for it not being a strong episode, there's a couple of things that got in here that are very story changing and, you know, big things for the day this was made. And one of them was, there is, and it's handled so tastefully and, you know, in a way that they could deal with it, get it past the censors, and also just, you know, bring up the subject, deal with it, and move on. And the subject was sexual assault. And, you know, it's not something that really pops into your head whenever you think of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Did they actually cover sexual assault in any of these episodes? And they may have done to a, you know, bigger extent later on in the series. As I say, it's been over 20 years, guys, since I say close to 20 years since I watched these properly. And yes, of course, Xander, up to this point in the series, we know he's had a crush on Buffy, and in this episode, you know, he's possessed with the spirit of the hyena, and they're just kind of close to the end of this episode. They're living on basic animal instincts, basically, and Xander breaks off from the main four for the first time to go after Buffy and actually tries to sexually assault her. You don't actually see it happening, but you know that's what's happened. Cuts from him actually going for her to the next scene in the library where Willow's doing research to try and work out what's happening. And the door opens and Buffy walks in and she's dragging an unconscious Xander behind him, and you know, she makes a comment towards, you know, sexual assault, and that's as far as it goes, you know. So they do actually brave into territory that you wouldn't expect for a series that for a start was aimed towards younger viewers, and that it was going out so early in the evening before the watershed. Like over here you're talking 7:30 p.m, which is incredibly early, like for a show that, you know, for a start is essentially a horror show. So I was taking brand new steps for its time and dealing with stuff in a way that got the story, the point across, that kind of put it on the nose, but at the same time did it in a way that was both tasteful, got it past the censor, and brilliant. So that's the one thing that you need to see this episode for, but that is just basically like, that's done and dusted in like 40 seconds at the very most. But the headmaster in this series, and for some reason his name has completely left me at this point. Anyway, he tracks the other four down, takes them to the office, because at one point they kill the school's mascot, which is a pig. And because the football team in the school are called the Razorbacks, if I recall properly. And the reason I'm not recalling properly is that I was actually recording this video like a couple of weeks after I've actually watched the episode again, so it's not exactly 100% fresh in my head. But the Razorbacks are the team name, and you know, that's a sort of pig. So of course the headmaster decides we'll get a pig as the team mascot. So these guys, you know, possessed with a hyena, they want to hunt. So of course this pig is in the school in a cage, so it's like, we're going to eat this thing. So the guy, headmaster, which is kind of a character at this point in the series, you're kind of growing to like him a lot. You know, he's the sort of guy that, you know, he's got a no nonsense attitude as well, but he's got one of these characters that is very likable, and you know, at this point you're kind of thinking he's going to be a character that you're going to like in the progression of the series, essentially. So he gets these guys, figures out what they've done to this pig, and he takes them to his office. He's threatening to kick them out of school, and expel them. And he lifts the phone call to their parents and the police, whatever. And they attack him, and it fades to black. But we find out they've actually murdered and killed the principal of the school. So, a big game changer in the series to this point. In episode 2. Episode 1, they set up like a main cast of characters, like the main circle. And in episode 2, they took one of those characters and killed him. So, straight out the gate, game changer. And then, they set up the series as in Buffy's the Slayer. She has to try and keep this a secret. And whatever happens, they try to cover it. Not that they're trying to cover it up, but they're not, ringing any alarms to get it out there and say, right, this is happening, the Slayer's here, blah blah, look at me, sort of thing. So, most of the episodes something happens, but something kind of covers it up as well, So the fact that they actually made the decision to kill a character such as the headmaster of the high school, that's, that's a brave thing to do, basically. So, by the end of the episode, they work out what's happened. They go back to the hyena house to see this guy that warned them off at the start, and he's very helpful. And he's like, I've done a little bit of research on this. This is why I knew something was wrong. I've cordoned this whole thing off, quarantined it to keep people out because I knew something wasn't right. So he's going to get Giles and Buffy to bring the 5 students back. They've worked out a way to counteract the spell, put everything back to normal. So Giles and Willow get there before the rest of them. Buffy's off fighting the guys, trying to get them to chase her back. What we figure out is, by the end of this episode, that this zookeeper has known all along that this could happen, and he's actually wanted to use the power of the hyena to his own advantage. And these guys actually screwed up his plans at the beginning of the episode by accidentally getting possessed by the hyena. And by the time Buffy gets the students back to this place thinking that you're going to sort this here out, this guy has actually knocked Giles out, has Willow knifed their neck, threatening to kill her if Buffy doesn't do what she's told, sort of thing. So and perfect horror style, this villain character falls foul to his own plans, basically, and everything blows up in his face. The students get cured of the hyena. The spirit of the hyena jumps out back into the hyena. The spirits jump out. The spirit of the hyena jumps out of the students into this guy. He gets what he wants. He gets the power of the hyena. He gets I'm going to be unstoppable, sort of thing. And in the fight with Buffy, she didn't actually mean to do this, by complete accident. She knocks him back towards the hyena enclosure, falls over, her being the big good character of the film. I can't kill this guy because he's actually human. So she's running to help him, grabs hold of him by his hand, and he's panicking, trying to get help from her at this point. But too late, the hyenas grab him, trail him in to the enclosure. Of course, that's him. He's been eaten as well. Game over. So by the end of the episode, we get our little closure with Xander trying to apologise for everything that he did, for being an idiot and hurting Willow's feelings in a major way. Like, best friends from day one, and he essentially told her that, earlier on in the episode that, I don't want to hang out with you anymore, you're just, you're a waste of space sort of thing. So really hurt her feelings on the deepest level that he could. And then of course sexual assault on Buffy. So he's saying, I can't recall anything, but it's all blur from the first time I went under the hyena enclosure until they got him cured by the end of the episode. I've got no idea what happened in between those two times. Whatever I did, I'm really sorry. And everything's fine and well. Buffy and Willow forgive him, off they go. Giles is off in the background, passing by, hears this, and he comes over and he's like, in all my research, I've never heard of this type of possession having memory lapses and people not remembering what happened. And I think it's just Xander's way of just trying to, I would rather they think that I don't know what happened. So that's not a strong episode, but as I say, it's one that if you're watching the series, this is a few parts in this episode that you really need to see, because it does actually change the structure, the character structure in a way, for the rest of the series. And as I say, the whole sexual assault thing was just tastefully done.
This has been a production of Coins Edge Media. Check out my social media links in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening.